Hello, my friends from TreatConf. I'm very pleased to be here presenting this video for you. And today we're going to talk about my favorite subject these days, which is Quarkus. That's why I named this session Coding That Sparks Joy with Quarkus. And I know how many of you know Maria Kondo, but yes, I stole the spark joy from her. And let me introduce myself properly. My name is Edson Yanaga. I'm a director of developer experience at Redhat. My Twitter is @Yanaga. You can see on the top of the screen. And just in case you want to follow me, I talk a lot about Java, DevOps, microservices, cloud computing, Kubernetes, software architecture, and of course, Quarkus. And some fun facts, I happen to be also a Java champion and a Microsoft MVP, and all of my grandparents are Japanese, but I was born and raised in Brazil. That's why I have this very nice Brazilian accent. But today, right now, I'm streaming from Cary, North Carolina. And I like to say that you should follow me on Twitter because I know the Java developers, they have a lot of available time to be tweeting, to be Slacking, Facebooking, Instagramming, or anything else. Because Java developers, they always have the excuse that, well, my code is compiling, I'm executing my Maven build, I'm waiting for my application server to restart. But this is an old Java joke. It's not true anymore. So I think that with Quarkus, the amazing development experience that Quarkus provides us, well, we won't be able to do this kind of jokes anymore because with Quarkus, everything is just a matter of saving and it's automatically there. So Quarkus is all about developer joy. So actually, when I'm developing, I spent some weeks ago developing some code with Node.js, and I can tell you that Quarkus is faster than Node.js for iterative development. So you just save, you refresh your browser, and it's automatically there. Well, Quarkus is even faster than that. And Quarkus is super small too. So if you think that old Java jokes that, well, but that Java consumes the entire memory of your machine, well, you learn that with Quarkus, Java is not that memory hog anymore. Everything you do in Quarkus can be super fast and super small. But I don't want to just talk about Quarkus because I think that you will be amazed by the development experience by Quarkus if you're able to code that. So the #1 goal of this session is to make you try Quarkus immediately after I finish my talk. And the best way for you to start your Quarkus experience is if you to go to the website, quarkus.io. So if you can zoom here, you can go to quarkus.io. We have very nice guides. We have a very nice starting experience. But the button that I want to check today is this one on the top right of your screen, Start Coding. So if I click here, I have some magic going on. The only boring part, I'm going to make it bigger. The only boring part is for me to have to type this group ID, for example, com Red Hat developers, and the artifact ID, which is going to be Spark Joy, of course. And you have a lot of different extensions because the Quarkus ecosystem is composed of many different libraries and frameworks and other stuff, but we can add them later. Just to get started, you just have to type here, generate your application. By the way, you can push that directly to GitHub, but we're going to download the zip file today. So I click here, it's going to download the zip file. Okay, it's saved, and we're going to switch now to my terminal. So if I just unzip the zip file that I just downloaded, and yes, we have Sparks Joy folder. So if I just list the files over here, you'll be able to see that it's just a traditional Maven project. And before you ask me, yes, we support Gradle, but since I'm a Maven user, I prefer Maven. You know, bad choices. So we're going to start now my favorite IDE, which is Visual Studio Code with the Java extension right now. Oh, it's in another screen. Now you can see my Visual Studio Codes. And if I show up, you can see that the Quarkus generator already created an example resource for me. So this is just a traditional JAX-RS endpoint. So let's go back to the terminal and pay attention because I'm only going to do this once because with Quarkus, you never have to stop your Quarkus application to see the changes in your code. I'm going to start my favorite feature of Quarkus, which is Quarkus development mode. So if I tap the magic words, which is MVN Quarkus, :dev, Quarkus is going to start in development mode, which means that Quarkus will listen for changes in our properties files, in our Java files. And whenever I have a change and I send a request to my browser, Quarkus is going to restart itself automatically. So I'll be able to see the changes. And with Quarkus, you don't have to wait minutes. You don't have to wait seconds. With Quarkus, everything is a matter of milliseconds. And actually, whenever I restart Quarkus, when I'm not streaming, which I'm doing right now, with Quarkus, I can expect like a restart time of approximately 100 milliseconds up to 200 milliseconds. So it might be slower today because we know we're live streaming. You're seeing the recorder version, but I'm streaming through the web, and you get to figure out, right? So let's go here. Oh, let's check if it's working. Open the browser and localhost 8080. Yes, my new cloud native application is ready. And if I go to my hello endpoint, yes, it's working and it's returning hello. And if I go back here to my Visual Studio Code, I can change, for example, the greeting. Because I'm Brazilian, I'm going to say hola. And I just saved the file, go back here to the browser, refresh, and it's automatically there. How long did Quarkus take to restart? Right now, Quarkus took 200 milliseconds, 232 milliseconds to be able to restart. It's milliseconds, not seconds, so 0.232 seconds. That's how fast Quarkus can be. And the more you use the Quarkus development mode, the faster it gets. So let's see how fast can we get. So we just changed it on the fly. Suppose that I don't want a plain static string. I want this property to be configured dynamically. So I could, for example, type string greeting. And I could say that, well, let's provide a config property. Config property, the name of the property is going to be greeting itself. And instead of returning just this hola, I can return, for example, greeting. Okay. And I just go back here to my browser, refresh, and oops, I have an error. And Quarkus has very informative error messages. And if just in case you use it to have to scroll through a long stack trace, don't worry. With Quarkus, we always invert the stack trace. So the most meaningful exception is always on the top. So we have here, well, you asked for a configuration property called greeting, but you didn't provide one. How do we fix that? We go back here, open my application properties file, and I provide that property. So greeting is going to be, let's try to add some French. Bonjour. And I save the file, go back here, refresh, and bonjour is already there. And remember, this is a plain old JAX-RS synchronous stuff. But if you want Quarkus to be async, you just change the return type. So I'm just going to copy paste here these lines, because I also want get produce text plain. Let's provide a different path called, for example, async, if I want to create an async endpoint. And just by returning, changing the return type, for example, public completion stage of type string. Let's name it hello async. I can do that. So return, the easiest way for me to create a completion stage is by a completed future. Supply async. I'm going to provide a lambda here. It's gone, hello, I'm async. And save the file, go back here and refresh. And now I had a compilation error. But again, Quarkus has very nice informative messages. So I'm saying, well, I'm seeing that in my file, line 29, I'm missing a semicolon. And actually, it's not a semicolon. I typed one additional parenthesis. So I just remove that, save the file, refresh, and it's already there. So it's saying bonjour. But if I go /async, hello, I'm async. And how long did Quarkus take to restart this time? We took approximately, let's see, find a number, 0.188 seconds. That's how fast Quarkus can be in development mode. And actually in production, it's even faster, okay? And you might be saying to me, well, it's only that fast because it's just a plain static string. But no enterprise Java application is enterprise enough if you don't add a database. So let's try to do that. How do we do that? Well, before we start, I already have a MariaDB database running here. I have a database called SparkJoy, and if you can see that it's an empty database, no tables. So go back here. So let's try to add more capabilities to my Quarkus application. We're going to add that capabilities by using what we call an extension. So I can use the Maven plugin. I can add that dependencies to my pom.xml file, or I can use the Quarkus extension from VS Code. I'm going to use that. So what we want to do, we want to use a MariaDB. So let's try to add the JDBC driver for MariaDB. I want to use JPA with Hibernate, but I want to show a new API called Panache, which is only provided by Quarkus. And Panache, what else? I want to use some open API too. We're going to see more of the layer, and I want to return some JSON. So let's add the JSON-B extension to Quarkus, and I think it's enough, but just in case we forgot something, we can always add more later, okay? Just hit enter, and you can see that this extension is just calling the Maven plugin with some parameters, let's see, after it finishes, yes, it just added those dependencies to my pwn.xml file. If I open that file here, pwn.xml, you can see that what happened right now is just, well, I have these additional extensions, REST Easy JSON-B, OpenAPI, MariaDB, and ORM Panache. How do I configure my database access here with Quarkus? Well, the easiest way, of course, is by using application properties. So you just type some properties. I have a template here. So it says SparksJoy, MariaDB, yes. Username SparksJoy, passwords SparksJoy, and generation is going to be updates. Never do this in production, please, but since it's just a demo, it's very nice that as I'm typing, my database schema is going to be automatically updated for me, okay? I just have it's JDB CRL okay, here, okay? So I think I figured out everything. Now for me to test it, let's create a new file called developer because we're going to create a developer entity. And then class developer, if you ever used a JPA before, you know that I just have to type here at entity and probably would have to type a very boring private long ID and provide an ID and at generated value. But this is just boring. With Quarkus, it's all about joy. So you don't have to type those boring properties. And you just have to extend Panache entity, and a lot of magic happens here. Then suppose now that I want to provide a property. Every developer should have a name. So let's try a private string name. And you're wondering, yes, we probably would have to type boring getters and setters, but with Panache, you don't have to do that. Well, if you're a Java developer, you're using the Java world to be creating repositories, which is the most popular persistent pattern for Java developers, and mainly because of limitations. So repositories, that's the only thing we could do in the past. But if you ever used Ruby on Rails on Play Framework, you know that on these ecosystems, it's much more common for you to use an active record pattern, where you mix your persistent methods with your own entity. And I think it's very productive if you have like simple domain models. If you have complex domain models, maybe repositories are better. But I want to show you the different way, the new way that Panache allows you to do. But of course, Panache also helps you to create repositories, okay? So, and with Panache, and think about that, I can switch this to a public field. And I know it's very opinionated, and you might have mixed feelings about that, but think better. If you're declaring private fields and generating the getters and setters every time, you don't have true encapsulation because you're exposing the internal state of your entity anyway. So with Panache, they took a bold and very opinionated approach. So why not we declare public fields, but at build time? We translate that public fields to private fields and generate the getters and setters. So you can code like a public field, which means be super productive, but at runtime, it runs with getters and setters because we know we have a lot of frameworks that rely on getters and setters. So it doesn't make any difference at runtime because Quarkus is optimized for build time, but during development is much more productive. But if you want to create the old way, you can. And actually, if you provide your own getters and setters, Quarkus will use them and will not generate other getters and setters for you. So let's stick with that. And now for me to test that, I want to create another endpoint. So let's create another file here called developer resource. So I'm going to expose it, developer resource. So it's going to be at path/developer. And I want a get endpoint, which produces media type.json. JSON application. Actually, I've imported media type this one. JSON. Oh, come on, I imported the wrong one. And just to make my code clean, I don't want this very long. Okay. So if I just type here media type, import the right one, and it's good. So let's return a list of developer. So let's call it developers. And yes, how do I retrieve all of the developers in my database? Well, I probably would have to inject an entity manager, create a query. But since we're using Panache, all that I have to do is this: return developer dot list all, and that's it. It should be working already. Let's test this endpoint. And remember, I changed the .xml file, add dependencies, add the properties, and add a lot of class files, but I didn't stop Quarkus yet. So if I just go back here to my browser and type here localhost 8080/developer and hit enter, Quarkus is connecting to the database, creating the database schema, updating, restarting, and it's running. Well, it's empty because I don't have anything in my database. But if I go back here to my terminal, you can see if I show the tables right now, already have the tables and select star from developer. I don't have anybody. How do I insert developers in my database? Well, I could, for example, be inserting manually here through SQL, but it's just boring. Let's try to do that in the REST way. So we need to create a post endpoint. I'm going back to my code here. I'm going to generate, let's create a post endpoint. And this one's going to produce media type .json, is going to also consumes media type.json. Come on, media type.json. And it's going to return a response. New developer. And if I want to persist, I will just need to make sure that the ID is null and no entity manager required. Since I'm using Panache, I can just say developer.persist, and I'm going to return response.status. Let's say created, and return the same entity that we just created, developer, and that's it. Build. Not encoding, that's entity. Today's been hard on my keyboard. Okay, and I guess it should be enough. How do we test this post endpoint? Well, I could be typing very hard, like for a curl CLI command, or I would need, for example, a Postman plugin in my Firefox browser. But instead, since I added the Open API extension, I can just go localhost 8080, Swagger UI, that's in development mode at least. I have access to my Swagger UI, which is consuming the Open API endpoint that is generated automatically by Quarkus. And you can see that here I have 4 REST endpoints. The one I'm interested in is this post developer. And I have this button, try it out. I have the schema. Let's try it out. And here's providing me with the request body. Let's try to create a developer, Yanaga, and execute that. And let's see the response. Oops, I have an error, 500. Well, Quarkus provided me the error message, but what happened is that I forgot. Quarkus is complaining that you want to persist something to the database, but you didn't provide a transaction. How do I solve it? Well, just add the add transaction annotation, and it's good. No restarting. I just go back here to my Swagger UI and hit the button execute again. When I hit it, you see, now I have the proper return code 201, and the response body is really Yanaga. Let's try to add some more developers here. I'm going to add my boss here just in case he watches the session. I don't think so, but you never know. I'm trying to add some other colleagues of my team. Let's try to add Kamesh. Let's try to add Sebastian and Alex. So we have some developers over there. And yes, I guess it should be good. So now if I go back here and just type localhost 8080/developer, yes, all developers are persisted. Cool, isn't it? I think it is. So what else can we do? We can go back here to developer, and I could add, for example, another property, public string favorite framework. And since everybody's favorite framework these days, at least in the Java world, is Quarkus, I can, since it's just JPA, I can add some annotations. I can say that column definition is going to be varchar 255 default Quarkus. Okay, and just save the file, go back here to the browser, refresh, and it's already there. Everybody's favorite frameworks really is Quarkus. And remember that Quarkus is you're coding like a public field, but you're running like a private property. If you just decide to generate your own getters and setters, for example, you have a new requirement, and now all names should be uppercase. Name to, oops. to uppercase. And just add your own getter, hit save and refresh. You can see that now everybody's name is uppercase. And just in case you provide another getter, for example, get favorite framework, and decide that now everything should be lowercase, you just generate the getter, save the file, go back here, refresh, and now everything is lowercase. That's how fast, productive, and joyful it is for you to be developing when using Quarkus. Cool, isn't it? What else can we show? I want to show you another feature of Quarkus. So what we're going to do right now, I think, well, just for a moment, I'll have to stop the amazing Quarkus development mode because I want to create another project. Okay, and another way for you to create a Quarkus project is using the Quarkus plugin, Quarkus Maven plugin. We're going to use the latest Quarkus version, 152 final, create. I'll have to type the same boring properties. For example, I'll have to type the group ID, con Redhat, developers, the artifact ID, let's call it remote, REST resource, yes, please, hello, yes. So if I join this remote project, what can we do? Well, I'm going to show, since I don't have much time today, I'm going to stick to the fun part. NVN package. I'm going to skip the test, sorry, never do this in production. And I'm going to show you the native feature of Quarkus. And why are we doing that? Let's go back here to my presentation, because it might take some time. And you might be wondering why, despite the amazing development experience, which I guess is an excuse good enough for you to be trying Quarkus, what else Quarkus can do for me? Well, Quarkus was created for the new cloud native, container first, Kubernetes first approach. So if you really want to be optimized for the cloud, you should be strongly considering Quarkus. So let me go here. Quarkus was designed for a very small startup. And actually, we don't even measure startup because it's like misleading. We measure time to first successful response. So it doesn't matter if your container like declares everything as lazy and you just start, but when the first request arrives, you take another 30 seconds to reply. The real number that matters is how long do you take to reply successfully to the first request, okay? And we're measuring here not heap size, but the total amount of memory that your Java process is consuming. So we have to measure the heap, out of heap memory, stacks, threads, all of these adds up to the memory consumption of the Java project. So let me show you some numbers. What we have here is that, for example, if you're using Quarkus, a traditional REST endpoint, if you compile that to native, which is what I'm doing exactly in the background, Quarkus with GraalVM, your Java application will consume only 13 megabytes of RAM. If you're using Quarkus plus OpenJDK, your Quarkus application is going to consume 74 megabytes of total RAM size. And your traditional cloud native stack that you're probably using will consume at least 140 megabytes of RAM. So depending on your scenario, Quarkus can be 2 times smaller or can be 10 times smaller regarding memory consumption. And well, this is just REST endpoints. Let's try to add some JPA to your equation. If you add JPA to your equation, Quarkus plus GraalVM is going to consume 35 megabytes of RAM. If you run that on top of OpenJDK, it's going to consume 130 megabytes of RAM. And your traditional cloud native stack is going to consume at least 280 megabytes of RAM. That's how fast and that's how small Quarkus can be when running production. And you know, memory is probably one of the most expensive resources that we have in the cloud environment these days, because you know, CPU you can share over time, network too, disk storage is very cheap, but memory, well, you don't have enough techniques for memory consolidation. So if your application requires a 1 gigabyte heap size, if your machine has 2, you'll be able to fit at the most 2 instances. And you know, with cloud native, it's all about having multiple instances that scale up and scale down. So the more instances you can fit in the same amount of memory, it's always the best, the better. And actually, we even have a nice blog post at the Quarkus website. Vodafone was able to reduce their cloud computing cost by half just by switching for example, Spring Boot to Quarkus, because, well, Quarkus consumes less than half the memory of the same function with the same functionality compared to Spring Boot. Okay, and let's talk about fast boot plus fast time to first response. So if you use Quarkus with GraalVM in a REST endpoint, you're going to take 14 milliseconds. If you're using OpenJDK, it's going to take 750 milliseconds. And your traditional cloud native stack is going to take at least 4.3 seconds to reply to the first request. Okay, let's add a database to the equation. If you add Quarkus with GraalVM, it's going to take you 55 milliseconds. With OpenJDK, it's going to take you 2.5 seconds. And your traditional cloud native stack is going to take at least, was so slow I had to scroll the picture, it's going to take at least 9.5 seconds. That's how fast Quarkus can be when running your Java applications. And so depending on the scenario, Quarkus can be, for example, up to 100 times faster than your traditional cloud native stack. And while I did this talk, I guess we're all done with the native process compilation. And let's go back here to my target folder. You can see that I have this executable image, which is consuming 26 megabytes of disk space total. If I just run this process, and yes, Faro, I want to run it, you can see that Quarkus, at least in my machine, started in 22 milliseconds. And if I go back here to my browser, localhost 8080/hello, yes, it's already running. And how much memory is it consuming? Let's try. I have an alias here for PS. So grep runner. And my process is consuming only 22 megabytes of total memory consumption. And it could be even smaller because I didn't optimize. I tried that before. This particular Java application can run with a heap size of 6 megabytes. Do you ever wonder the day where your Java application would be able to start in only 22 milliseconds and consume only 22 megabytes of total resident set size? Me neither, but I'm very thankful that this day arrived because of Quarkus. What else can we do here? I'm almost running out of time, but I want to show another feature. A lot of us are Spring developers just like me, and you're thinking, wow, can I have this amazing development experience, be super fast and super small, but yet still reuse my existing Spring skills? The answer is yes, you can. For example, we support Spring Data, we support Spring Security, Spring Web, Spring DI, and other Spring APIs. But since I don't have much time today, I'm just going to show you how you can create, for example, Spring Web API endpoints using Quarkus. So right now I'm invoking the Maven plugin again. I'm going to add this dependency, Quarkus Spring Web. And what I can do right now, I'm going to create a new file called developer controller.java. And it's a class. So if you use it to Spring REST APIs, you can use it at REST controller. You can say request mapping is going to be path/Spring developer. And I can use public list developers, return developer dot list all. And I just provide here a get mapping, and that's it. It should be enough. I just saved this file with a new path. Oh, and I forgot to restart Quarkus in development mode. Let's do it again. Stop this process. Spark joy. MVN Quarkus :dev. And before we ask, we are not running Spring out of Quarkus because we wouldn't benefit from it. If you ran Spring out of Quarkus, we would be as fat and slow as just Spring. So what we're doing is that think about using the Spring APIs. Spring APIs is a way for you to provide metadata to your application. So with Quarkus, what we're doing is that we're just reading the metadata from the Spring APIs and annotations and re-implementing that on top of Quarkus, so you can use the same APIs, but yet still be supersonic, superatomic, super fast, and super small. It's already running. So if I go back here, localhost 8080/developer. Yes, my developers are already there. This is a JAX-RS endpoint, but if I type Spring-developer, all of my developers are over there. So yes, it's super easy for you to be using Spring APIs on top of Quarkus too. What else do we support on top of Quarkus? Let's go back here to my presentation. And you might be wondering, why is Quarkus so fast? Because Quarkus is ahead of time. So instead of doing everything at startup time, which is what Java frameworks did in the past 25 years, Quarkus does all of those steps at build time. So a traditional traditional application, a Java application, will, for example, at boot time, scan for annotations, metadata, XML files, property files, parse the descriptors to get that metadata. We'll generate the meta model. Oh, I have this bean. This needs to be injected in another bean. I need a transaction proxy. So we'll generate this meta model and then start the services. And it's going to take forever, and it's going to be executed every time you start your Java process. But you might be wondering, in the past, when your Java application server will be restarted every 6 months, it's okay to do that at startup time. But now that we have this cloud native world where you have instances spin up and down every time, when you might have serverless workloads that you need to start up in a matter of milliseconds, well, it changes everything. So what Quarkus do to be so fast when starting up? Well, Quarkus did all of these 3 steps here before at build time. So here with Quarkus, this is done at build time. So when a Quarkus application starts, it only needs to start the services. And Quarkus consumes such a low amount of memory because, well, for scanning, annotation, parsing descriptors, and everything else, you need to load those classes into memory. Even though those classes are never required at runtime, they're still required to bootstrap your process. Well, since Quarkus doesn't need to do any of this at runtime, we don't load those classes. We only load the classes that are really required at runtime. That's why Quarkus consumes such a low amount of memory. And Quarkus supports, since the very first version, a lot of different frameworks. So can you be reactive with Vertex, Hibernate, REST-easy, Camel, MicroProfile, Netty, Kubernetes, Jaeger, and a ton of other extensions that were provided to you by the community. So you can see you can run a lot of different frameworks and libraries on top of Quarkus, be super fast and super small, and still have all of this joy of development experience just by saving and hit refresh, right? And yeah, I think that's all that I had to share with you today. I don't want to extend too much to be so much over time. Thank you very much for joining me today. You can always reach me on Twitter at Yanaga. You can send me a direct message. My DMs are open. I might take some time to reply because I receive a lot of messages. You can always reach out to me at my email, yanaga@redhat.com. And thank you very much. And I'll be available for questions just after this talk. We have a special room for that. And I hope to see you there because I know you are very interested in Quarkus. Thank you very much for coming to this session.